You're listening to Resilience in Dark Times. I'm your companion and guide, Michael Glavin. Whatever brought you here, I'm glad you found us. This is a space for honest conversation, practical strategies, and the kind of hope that comes from facing reality together. Let's dive in. Before we begin, I'm curious, what brought you here? As you hit that play button, what is your motivation? What are you hoping to get out of this podcast? Just take a moment and notice that internal impulse in you. I imagine that you're wanting to feel better, that you're suffering in a world that feels broken, and you're wanting some relief. You're wanting to become more resilient in these difficult times. Just notice that desire to feel better, that desire for growth that is inside you right now. That is what this podcast is all about. This podcast is about helping you stay in touch with that vital impulse and to nurture it to help it to grow. We are all familiar with what psychologists call resistance. That's when we decide to do something that's good for us, but we just don't want to do it when the time comes. We'll make a New Year's resolution to get into shape, to lose weight. But when the time comes to actually get out into the cold and go to the gym, we can think of a million reasons to not to do that. We don't have enough time. Our shoes aren't right. We don't have anything to wear. And so we don't do it. That's called resistance. That's the part of us that fights against healing, growth, change. So we're all familiar with that part. But what about the part that made that New Year's resolution? What about the part of us that does put on our shoes, that does lace them up and go out? What about that part? What's that part called? The part that wants us to be healthier. The part of us that wants to heal, to grow, to transform in a positive way. Psychologist Dr. Diana Fosha calls that internal drive transformance. It's the equal opposite of resistance. As she says, and I quote, "It is that inherent, wired-in motivational force for growth, healing, and self-righting that is present in all living things." In this moment, you don't know if this podcast is going to help you or not. But I want to say that that is secondary to your drive to be resilient. Your drive to be resilient is what is important. Your desire to feel better, to learn to cope and even to thrive, your longing to become resilient, that is the ember of resilience. That is the ember of your resilience. I know sometimes we can lose sight of that ember and things can feel hopeless. Sometimes it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. Sometimes it doesn't feel worth it. But that ember of resilience is always there. Sometimes it might be buried under the ashes, but if we can look deep enough, it is there burning within us. So the point of this podcast is for me to help you turn that ember into a fire. It's for me to bring you kindling, to bring you sticks, to bring you, empty bird's nest that's been abandoned, to bring you logs. And it's for you to make use of these things I bring you. It's for you to take some of this kindling and say, yes, this is perfect. And to say, oh no, I don't need that. That's not for me. I'll just leave it aside. It's for you to take something, a big stick, and say, okay, this is too big, but I'm going to break it down to something smaller that I can use. Or if I can bring you a damp log, that's not quite it. You'll put it next to your fire to dry it out so you can use it later. And then maybe other people will see your fire and come and warm themselves by it. Maybe other people will gather around you, looking towards your resilience. And if we want to push this metaphor even farther, maybe you'll start cooking and you'll start to make nourishment for your community and pass that out. That is what I'm proposing. I will provide you with various resources. Some will be of help to you and some won't. You will take what you need and modify it to fit your situation. And once your fire is going, you'll share it with others. How does that sound? Do we have a deal? If so, pour yourself a cup of tea or go for a walk or settle into your commute to work and let's get started. resilience. In my experience with hardship, I've noticed that sometimes I have been resilient, remarkably so, and other times I have not been resilient. I've languished and not moved on. I've just been stuck. So what separates the two outcomes? I've noticed that when I am stuck, I've avoided my feelings. I've avoided what happened. I pretend that everything was fine, and that caused me to get stuck. But when I face what was happening or what happened, I allowed myself to feel my feelings, and I worked through them, and I took action. I was able to move on. Somewhat damaged, right? But ultimately better off. More mature, more wise, more insightful, more open, more connected. Professionally, I'm a psychotherapist. I see clients in my private practice. I also own and run a counseling center where I train and supervise other therapists and help them with their clients. And in my experience, in my practice with my clients, I see this happen again and again. Clients who push things away, don't want to feel their feelings, don't want to face what's really happening, they get stuck. They have a hard time. But once we start to feel our feelings, once we start to turn to face what is happening or what happened, and they allow themselves to move through their feelings and start to take action in their lives, then they feel better. They become resilient. They become stronger after the experience than they were before. And so that's my hope for you. I want to say that the fact that you're here and you're starting to look at what's happening, what's going on, and you're feeling your feelings, that is all good. That's a really good sign. Now, as an accompaniment to this podcast, you might want to get a therapist to help you through these difficult feelings if you're really struggling. But that's up to you. I'm here for you regardless. So here we are in this difficult historical moment. I won't say dire yet, but definitely very challenging. Bad things are happening all around us, terrible things, both ecological and political. So many bad things are happening that it can be overwhelming and feel like it's difficult to cope at times. That's why I think the most important question of our time is this. How do we cultivate resilience so that we can take life-affirming action in the face of authoritarianism and climate crisis? That is what this podcast is dedicated to trying to answer with you, with your help, this all-important question. How can we cultivate resilience so that we can take life-affirming action in the face of authoritarianism and climate crisis? So what is resilience? According to the American Psychological Association, resilience is the, quote, process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. That sounds like our current situation, and it seems like our future. So that is something I would really like more of in my life. Because I don't know about you, but I'm having a hard time coping sometimes right now. On the ecological front, we have 1,000-year floods happening every couple of years. We have raging wildfires and mega hurricanes destroying entire communities. We have droughts, famine, heat waves, polar vortexes, vortices. I'm not even sure how to say that, and I don't want to know how to say that. Why do I know about polar vortexes? Every year, natural disasters seem to be getting more frequent and more catastrophic. And on the political front, now we have authoritarianism on the rise across the globe and here in the United States. The U.S. federal government has become a hostile actor attacking its own people and its own democratic institutions. It seems that each day there are 3 or 4 unprecedented things, 4 nightmare scenarios for people living here, not to mention the suffering inflicted on people across the globe. So as I say this, let's take a minute to pause and just notice what's happening in your body as I describe what's happening to our world. I don't know about you, but for me, I feel a tightness in my chest. My breathing gets a little shorter and constricted. I'm noticing sort of a heat rising in me, and my hands feel more active. To me, those are sources or indications of anger rising up in me. But for you, maybe you're feeling like a tightness in your stomach and a racing heartbeat, maybe a quickened breathing. That might be a sign of fear. Maybe you're noticing a sinking feeling in yourself and a desire to just lie down. That's an indication of what we call a dorsal vagal shutdown, and it indicates feeling despair or hopeless. So all these feelings that I'm feeling, that you're feeling, fear, anger, sadness, despair, these are all normal reactions to what's happening right now. So let's take a couple deep breaths with long exhales to help ourselves feel a little bit better. Deep inhale with a long exhale. And you want the exhale to be longer than the inhale because that's what activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us calm down. Deep in-breath, ideally through the nose. Long exhale through the mouth. With the sigh as a bonus. So just notice what happens in your body as you take these deep breaths with long exhales. I notice my shoulders starting to relax a bit. I notice my breathing getting a little deeper, less shallow. And one last one. Inhale, and long exhale. We all have these feelings of fear, anger, sadness when we look out on the world. Especially when we look out on the world and we see that the people who are supposed to be protecting us, taking care of things, being stewards, are not doing anything to stop the threats that we're seeing. We can see where this is going, but no one is really taking any serious action to stop global warming. No one is really doing enough to stop the quick march towards authoritarianism. I can see where this is headed. You can see where this is headed, but there's no one taking coordinated action to prevent it. So in the last few months, I kept thinking, I think I'm feeling like Cassandra. Isn't that woman from Greek mythology that something, she can see the future or something and no one's believing her? So I had to look it up. And yes, this is her story. Cassandra. She was apparently a very beautiful woman. So much so that the god Apollo had a crush on Cassandra. And he tried to woo her. And to that end, he gave her a gift. He gave her the gift of prophecy. She was able to see the future and what was going to happen. But this gift did not sway her. She still rejected Apollo. And he became angry, and so he cursed her. He cursed her to always tell the truth, so she had to share her prophecy with everyone that she met. But he also cursed her that no one would believe her. She was able to see what was going to happen. She saw the Trojan War coming, and she tried to warn people against it, but no one would believe her. She warned her brother about his foolish actions that could lead into the Trojan War, but he did not listen to her. She tried to warn people about the fall of Troy, but they did not listen to her. And so they rolled that giant horse inside the city walls and all went to sleep. And sure enough, Greek soldiers came out and conquered Troy. She even saw her death and the death of Agamemnon. But again, no one would listen. Again and again, she was able to see the negative consequences of where they were headed. She was able to see where things were going and the tragic ends. She tried to warn people, but no one took sufficient effort to prevent it. Can you relate? I know I can. We are able to see the dire outcome of what is currently happening, whether in terms of climate change or the imposition of authoritarian rule, but no one is taking the necessary action to prevent the worst outcomes. We see the bleak future, but feel powerless to change it. There's actually a psychological term called a Cassandra complex, It's not a diagnosis, but it's a way about talking about a certain type of experience. The experience when you can see what's going to happen but are powerless to stop it because you are not believed or taken seriously. This is a common experience for climate scientists who have been warning about the dire consequences of global warming for years, while nations do nothing to significantly alter our course. So we are like Cassandra because we can see the future, but we didn't get our foresight as a gift from an amorous Apollo. We see the future because of our awareness of what's happening in the world, our empathy for other people and other creatures, our knowledge of history and science, and our ability to see patterns. Awareness, empathy, knowledge, pattern recognition. These are our gifts. These are our strengths. But because the world is broken, because we're in the upside down, these strengths have become a source of our suffering. The messed up circumstances we have found ourselves in have turned our strengths into weaknesses. It's like we have the awareness of a mystic, but without the wisdom and spiritual practice to be able to handle it. In Buddhism, there's something called a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is an enlightened being who stays on the material plane to help other people reach enlightenment. This person is open to the suffering of the world, but they've had years, if not decades, of spiritual practices, meditation, study, training, a whole community to support them in their work. However, with modern media, we are flooded with the pain of the world without the psychic structures or the practices or wisdom to be able to process what we are exposed to. This podcast is meant to help you begin to build those skills, insights, practices, and wisdom that you need to be able to cope in this painful world. And not only to cope, but hopefully to thrive and eventually to help others as well. So far, we've located your ember of resilience burning inside you, as evidenced by your desire to feel better, your desire to heal, your drive to become resilient. We've also talked about how you are like Cassandra because you can see our tragic future. But unlike Cassandra, who got her foresight from Apollo, you get your foresight from your awareness, your empathy, your knowledge, and your pattern recognition. We talked about the Cassandra complex. That's when people are seeing what's going to happen and they speak the truth and no one believes them. It can feel very distressing, very upsetting. And I feel like I need to also talk about another term that's not an official diagnosis, but that's the quote-unquote Trump derangement syndrome. That's something that the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, so you mean the people who believe all the lies and I just like believe all the conspiracy theories and the QAnon stuff, the people who believe that the election was stolen so much so that they would storm the Capitol and beat people and spray pepper spray into people. And that turns out, no, that those people are not considered deranged, that people who believe the lies and take up violence to enforce lies, I guess. Those people are not considered deranged in this framework. The people who actually see what's going on and get upset by it and speak out against it. Trump and the right wing are pathologizing, speaking the truth, saying what's happening, being upset about the destruction of democratic institutions and then taking away people's rights. It reminds me of what happens with domestic violence and abusers. The abuser will abuse their partner, and then when the partner reacts and gets upset, they'll say, "What are you so upset about? You're crazy. You're so emotional. Like, what's wrong with you?" So maybe you're in a community, or maybe you're part of a family where people look at you and say, or say behind your back, that you have Trump derangement syndrome. And this is meant to isolate you. It's meant to make you feel crazy. It's meant to make you feel powerless. It's meant to make you feel alone. So in this way, too, you feel like Cassandra. But let me tell you one fundamental way that you're different than Cassandra. You are not alone. You have me. I am here for you. I see what you see. I believe you. And you believe me. You see what I see. Cassandra was alone. No one believed her. But you are not alone. I get it. I get what you're saying. I get what you're seeing. I see where this is headed too. I'm experiencing the same emotions you are. Fear, anger, sadness, a sense of overwhelm. We can be there for each other through this. We can support each other, and that makes all the difference. You have that ember of resilience inside you, always there, and you have me. And what's more, we are not alone. After Trump's first week in office, after his inauguration, what helped me was to look around the globe and see that people of the United States are not alone. I thought about the people of Hungary. I thought about the people of Russia, the people in China. Much of the world is under authoritarian rule. I now feel a solidarity with them in a way that was not present before. I look at the protests in Hungary and in other authoritarian places, and I feel a sense of solidarity. We're in this together, us and them. I have a global renewal sense of identity. In terms of global warming will affect us all at one point or another. Yes, it'll hit some people harder and more frequently, but all living creatures will be affected. We are all in this together. But not only are we not alone in our suffering, we're not alone in our desire to lessen the suffering of others and to help make a better world. Wherever there's a flood, a tornado, a hurricane, people spontaneously come together to help each other. In fiction and the media, whenever there's an apocalypse, it shows people turning on each other in this sort of Hobbesian nightmare scenario, a war of all against all. But in real life, that doesn't happen. In real life, neighbors help each other, and sometimes they form ongoing mutual aid organizations. Here in Chicago, people formed a group to help immigrants during Trump's first term crackdown. And then during the pandemic, that became a mutual aid organization to provide food and basic necessities to those who needed it. That group is ongoing, and there are many such organizations throughout the United States. As Mr. Rogers said, when disaster strikes, look for the helpers. There will always be people helping. And when there is authoritarianism, look for resistors. There are always people resisting and fighting for a better world. Right now, brave judges, lawyers, union members, and federal workers, don't think I would ever say a brave lawyer, but there are brave lawyers. The federal workers, to name a few, are standing up and saying no, at great personal risk to themselves. Earlier, we talked about how our circumstances have turned empathy and awareness into a source of our suffering. But I want to point out that those same qualities, awareness and empathy, can be turned into a gateway to connection with others. They can be turned as a source of connection to resilience and strength. Through empathy and awareness, we can be nourished by other people's strength, courage, hope, and fortitude. We can look outwards for those people working to help others and to help the planet, or we can look back on our own history. If we look back at U.S. history, there's always a current of authoritarianism and a resistance to it. We have the racism of the Jim Crow laws and the civil rights movement. We have both the horrible working conditions in the late 1800s and early 1900s imposed by greedy owners, and we have a labor movement that formed and won an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week, and it ended child labor and won worker safety laws. Yes, there's brutal oppression and there's fierce resistance to it. We need to look for the helpers. We need to look for the resistors. And we need to look for the resilience. My hope is that out of this collective trauma that we're experiencing now and that we are likely headed for, that there can come an awakening to our interconnection and interdependence, not only between humans, but between all living and non-living things. I have my own experience with trauma, and I won't go into it very much here. Maybe I'll go into it at another point. But in my experience, it broke me. The person I was was broken. But with therapy and with help from friends, that breaking broke me open. I'm not saying I would have chosen it. I'm not saying it was a good thing. But I did, as Jerry Lamagna, a psychotherapist, says, I made good use of suffering. So I took that awful, awful experience and I used it to transform my relationships. And later when I became a psychotherapist, there's a term for this. It's called post-traumatic growth. I felt like I was being broken apart, which is sort of like you feel like you're losing your mind at times. At times I was broken down. I shut down. I couldn't cope. But ultimately, I was broken open. And I realized I was living my life as if I was living my life in my relationships in a protected way. I'm not sure what I was protecting from, but there's always a distance. And after this experience, I realized that there is no protection, that we are vulnerable. We're all vulnerable. And so I might as well express myself and try to connect and try to be vulnerable and be connected in a deep way. And so that's what I'm hoping from this historical moment for our society. That our society is going along and has been going along as if everything's okay. As if even if Trump didn't get elected, well, then everything will be fine. Business as usual, just, tra-la-la. That, yeah, sure, there's some problems, but overall we're doing okay. And we weren't doing okay. Many members of our society and around the globe were not doing okay. And ecologically, we are headed for a cliff. And there was no stopping that with business as usual. What I'm hoping is in this horror that we're going to be facing in the future, and it has started already, is I'm hoping that people don't break apart mentally, although we will see some of that. I'm hoping that they don't break down and shut down, although we will see a lot of that. I'm hoping that we break open, and we break open in our relationship to each other so that we're more connected, more interconnected, and then we break open in relationship to the world and all the creatures of the world and try to really see what we're doing as a society and a culture and a people and stop that and reverse it and try to change fundamentally our relationship to each other and to the world. So that's what I'm hoping. Activist and eco-philosopher Joanna Macy talks about this potential in what she calls the Great Turning. The period we're going through right now, she calls the Great Unraveling. So that's the collapse we're seeing, the disintegration of ecological systems, erosion of democracy, rising authoritarianism, the breakdown of community. And it's not just one crisis. It's a crisis that is happening everywhere all at once. But here's the thing. Macy reminds us that the unraveling isn't the end of the story. It's a potential turning point. And we, all of us, are being asked to choose how we respond. That's where the Great Turning comes in. She describes it as an essential shift from industrial growth society, which depends on extraction and exploitation, to a life-sustaining society rooted in interconnection, justice, and care for all beings. And the Great Turning isn't just one thing, it's three things all happening at once. The first is what she calls holding actions. So that's standing up to injustice, protecting what we can. This is protest, legal defense, direct action. It's saying no to the destruction. The second is building new systems, renewable energy, regenerative agriculture, mutual aid, new ways of relating and working and organizing. We're not just resisting the old, we're planting the seeds of the new. And the third, and maybe the most important, is a shift in consciousness, remembering that we're not separate from each other or from the earth, that we are part of a living, sacred web of life. For Joanna Macy, this inner transformation gives meaning to the outer work. Macy also talks about active hope, which isn't about being optimistic. It's about choosing to participate in the healing of the world because it's meaningful, because it's who we want to be, because it matters whether or not we see results. So here we are, standing in the middle of the unraveling, holding both the grief and the possibility. And the question for Joanna Macy becomes, which stories shall we serve? Will we sink deeper into despair, numbness, and resignation? Or will we take part in some small or large way in the great turning? Because the future is not a fixed point, it is being shaped right now by the choices we make, by the stories we believe and the stories we tell and the actions we take. And that means that you matter. That ember of resilience inside you, it's part of something much larger, a global movement of people choosing life, choosing courage, choosing to turn towards each other and towards the earth. Now let's take a step back for a second. I don't know how I wound up talking so much about Joanna Macy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Joanna Macy. I love her work. I respect her tremendously. But this is not a podcast about Joanna Macy, although you should check out her stuff. But what I like about Joanna's work is that it fulfills certain criteria. So let's get meta for a second. Number one, it looks at what's really happening. It doesn't try to cover it up. Two, it allows for the feelings to come up based on what people are seeing, all the grief and the sadness and the sorrow, because that's real and that's important. That's the other side of love, is the grief and the sadness. And so if we want to feel joy and connection and happiness, we have to allow ourselves also to feel the sorrow. But another thing I like about her framework is that it gives us a direction, both collectively and also individually. And it makes what you do in this moment matter. I think that's important. For whatever your belief system is, however you frame things, however you look at what's happening now and the future, it should be based on reality and what's really happening. That's important. It should allow for the feelings that come up, both positive and negative, and it should give meaning to individual and collective action. So Joanna Macy's framework is one framework we'll look at and refer to, but I'm also going to look at other frameworks. So personally, I don't care if you adopt Joanna Macy's framework of a choice between the great unraveling or the great turning. That's not what's important to me. I think her framework is a pretty good framework, but maybe it doesn't resonate with you. That's okay. But you need to come up with a framework, a worldview that helps you become fully engaged in the present moment and empowered to take action to help yourself, your community, and all human and non-human creatures on the planet. So if Joanna Macy doesn't do it for you, that's fine. That's totally okay. And if you don't know what would resonate with you yet, that's fine too. We will be presenting many different philosophical, political, and spiritual worldviews in the future to help you find your philosophical home. Okay, let's summarize what we've covered so far. The very fact that you're listening to this podcast on cultivating resilience in the face of authoritarianism and climate change shows that you have the ember of resilience burning inside you. We got in touch with that core part of you that Dr. Diana Fosha calls transformance, the transformance drive, that inner drive for healing, growth, and positive transformation. We established that although you are similar to Cassandra, that you can see our tragic future, you are different in that you are not alone. I am here with you, and we are doing this together. Not only that, we are not alone. We are connected to all the people on the planet suffering under authoritarian rule and climate change, but also we are connected to the people who are resisting, the people who are trying to heal the planet, the people who are waking up, the people who are connecting and trying to make the world a better place and lessen each other's suffering. So let's take a moment to check in with ourselves. How are you feeling right now compared to when we started? I am noticing a warmth in my chest and in my belly. My chest is feeling more expanded. I'm sitting more upright. I'm feeling a little more hopeful. Are you feeling some of that too? Even just a little bit? If so, just touch into that part and let yourself feel that. So I'm wondering if you know someone, I'm betting you do, who might also use a little boost, a little feeling of connection. Maybe a friend or a family member. If so, and I think there is probably someone in your life, at least one person, why don't you share this episode with them? Let them know they're not alone either. That I'm here for them, that you're there for them, that there's a whole community out there for them. And maybe they can feel a little better too. So I will talk about next episode in a moment, but I want to tell you a little bit about what the podcast will cover as a whole first. So this podcast is calling on our collective mind to answer the question, how can we cultivate resilience and take life-affirming action in the face of authoritarianism and climate crisis? To help us answer this question, we will draw upon voices from psychology, politics, and philosophy. I'm interested in how these three realms shape and influence each other. What we believe impacts how we feel and how we act in the world. How we act shapes how we feel and what we believe, and how we feel affects what we believe and what we do. These are the three realms that I've studied all my life as an activist, a philosophy student, and a psychotherapist. Although I've studied and put a lot of thought into these questions, I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You know your situation better than I do. I trust you and your ability to evaluate what's going on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to help you think and feel through what's involved in these decisions. I'm going to try to help you set aside, process first, and then set aside your fear. To process your anger and set that aside. To touch into and sit with the despair and to work through it. I want to help you get in touch with yourself, with the people around you who you love, with the planet and its creatures. And if you're interconnected in this way and processing your feelings in a healthy way, you will take decisive action that will be helpful for yourself and the planet. Of that, I am sure. I hope this will be therapeutic, but this is not therapy. If you're feeling anxious or depressed, or if you just want some extra support, please reach out to a licensed therapist. If you're in Illinois, I run Deeper Connections Counseling. We're a counseling center that serves couples and individuals. And if you want to talk to somebody, you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with one of our therapists simply by going to dcctherapy.com, as in Deeper Connections Counseling. So dcctherapy.com. Okay, so where do we go from here? This show is ultimately about you and what you're going through. So let me know in the comments what you're struggling with, what you want help with, and what are your issues, what are your struggles, what are your hopes and dreams and fears. And let's tackle them together. Let's talk about them and work through them. I'm excited about the next episode. We're going to do a deep dive into resilience. We're going to look at some common misconceptions that I had myself, and these misconceptions block you from your own natural resilience. We're also going to look at the research and what the research says resilience actually is. And that's going to open up all different ways where you can start to become more resilient right now. So you won't want to miss that. Make sure you subscribe. So I want to end with a poem. And things are maybe dire. Maybe this is the sign of the apocalypse if I'm reading poetry. I've never really liked poetry. Confession time. It's often confusing to me. It's broken up on the page. I'm just like, wait, what? What are they talking about? And I think this is a metaphor for something, but why don't you just say it? Just say what you mean. Say what you mean. And I like philosophy. Philosophy, you just say what you mean. But when my mother passed away a few years ago, and during her memorial service, I started researching poems and things that she liked and that were important to her. And so I came across Mary Oliver, and to me, it's just like, wow, there's this person, Mary Oliver. And so I'm telling you and telling everyone, I think she's probably pretty popular, but In these dark times, I think it's important to reconnect with the simple things, with the beautiful things. I've been enjoying the birds outside my window. We're on a migratory path, and I'm seeing all these amazing birds, including goldfinches. And so this is a poem by Mary Oliver called The Invitation. It's an invitation to notice the beauty in this broken world. Invitation by Mary Oliver. Oh, do you have time to linger for just a little while out of your busy day? And very important day for the goldfinches that have gathered in the field of thistles, for a musical battle to see who can sing the highest note or the lowest, or the most expressive of mirth or the most tender. Their song, blunt beaks drink the air as they strive melodiously, not for your sake and not for mine, and not for the sake of winning, but for sheer delight and gratitude. Believe us, they say, it is a serious thing, just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this rather ridiculous performance. It could mean something. It could mean everything. It could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life." Thanks for joining us on Resilience in Dark Times. Remember, building resilience isn't a solo project. It's something we do together. If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and visit resilienceInDarkTimes.com to join our community of people who refuse to give up. Until next time, stay strong, stay connected, and keep resisting.